All right, I see a few other people have joined us, and I think that it's time for us to begin. So my name is Alex Brewer. I work here at Prime as the manager of data science. I've done a lot of work on Commons and been supporting SIP for the past few years. And I'm excited to tell you about some of the changes that we made this year. A lot of these changes are in response to comments that we received, so hopefully you see what you've told us reflected in the work that we provide you. Starting off at the agenda, today we're going to go over some of the general changes to evidence that we've made, and then we'll break this down specifically by principle throughout SIP. Give you an overview of assigning evidence creation to a contributor, which is something new that we've added this year as well. I'll give you a walkthrough of what does evidence creation look like on Commons, and then we'll take some time for questions. On questions, if you have any thoughts or comments, please share them in chat or in Q&A. So generally, what have we done for evidence and why have we done this? Starting out in 2024, we had things called objects and things called narratives. These included statements, policies, statistics, learning objects, events, community projects, public media, and student organizations. And we had a separate interface for chapter-based storytelling that we hoped would give a rich place for you all to tell your stories about what happens at your institution. This year, we've taken these two groups, merged them into one, and changed some of these that you may have known as objects from the year before. Now, everything is underneath this label of evidence, including narratives and some of the objects from last year, and we've also added some new ones. We've added these new evidence types after looking at the reports from last year and seeing that some of the types that we provided you didn't accurately capture what was going on within your institution, and the storytelling was made rough by that fact. This year, we have attachments, narratives, images, affiliations, courses, degree programs, conferences and publications, research projects, awards, and narratives. And now we'll go through what are each of these and what do they mean. Starting off, an attachment is a file upload where you can provide documents such as reports, strategic planning, operational guidelines, or policies as evidence for your school. Narratives are a text-based response allowing you to describe context, to reflect, or to tell a rich story or a case related to your experiences. An image is a visual upload, share photos, infographics, screenshots, or other evidence. Affiliations, this is something new that we want to formally structure, which is a record of your institution or your individual memberships, partnerships, collaborations, or associations active during the past reporting year. We also have courses formally defined instead of being called learning objects. It's a submission detailing a single academic course, and we provided you with a template so that it covers objectives, subjects, and descriptions. And you'll see this template later on in this presentation, and you can access it throughout the platform. Degree programs are an overview of the entire academic program at multiple levels. It outlines its structure and alignment with sustainability or RME, and this with course are quite closely related. Award, this is a place for you to share other recognition or honors or prizes that you've received outside of Prime. Love to hear examples from academia, civil society, industry, and things specifically related to RME or sustainable development. Finally, the last two types of evidence we have are conferences and publications and research projects. This is to bring some context in for the research part of your institution, which is something that we lacked a bit last year, so giving extra care to it now. We want to see documentation of your studies, collaborations, or initiatives, examining the topics similar to RME and what Prime works with. Also, please tell us about your academic conferences, the articles that you've published, or conference proceedings in which you were mentioned. Looking a bit about how does this affect principle by principle, less is more this year. From your feedback, there were too many mandatory questions, and this led to duplicate answers and skimming over some of the rich storytelling as we didn't provide you the sandbox or space that would be best to tell these stories. We have fewer required responses. We have more optional questions so you can share more parts of your story. And we want to hear your experiences in the way that you want to tell them. We'd like you to use the survey not as something that you always have to fill out 100%, but be flexible and tell the story that you'd like to tell. Going principle by principle, purpose last year, we had 2 mandatory objects. This has been reduced to 1 piece of evidence. Last year, values had 2 mandatory objects. Now we have 3 optional pieces. Teach was quite heavy, between 3 to 6 mandatory objects, and now there's 1 mandatory and 2 or more optional evidence. If you see the plus sign, you can add as much as you'd like here. If you feel like describing your entire course catalog, we'd love to see it, but it's absolutely not a requirement. Research again, we had 2 to 7 mandatory objects, and now we have 5 or more optional evidence. This is something that, again, you don't need to complete an evidence for every piece of research or conference that you or your organization attended in the previous year. But again, making the space for you to tell the story in the way that you'd like to. Partner has also slimmed down a bit. Instead of 2 to 6 mandatory objects, it's 2 or more optional evidence. Practice saw a very, very large reduction and a restructuring to hopefully avoid duplicate responses. Instead of 3 to 15 mandatory objects, it's 2 or more optional evidence. And share is about the same size, 1 to 2 mandatory. However, now it's optional. This does not take into account the questions that we've added to SIP, which you don't need to exactly specify an object or evidence or create a separate attachment to answer that part. But we do have questions which are not reflected here. So it's not as short as it seems, but we have slimmed it down quite a bit from the year before. On the left, you can see the selector for how you pick what kind of evidence you'd like to create. This is something that we've redesigned to provide you a better experience as you use the platform. And you'll see this in just a little bit as we go through the walkthrough. Now, something that might take a bit of time to explain is assigning evidence creation to a contributor. What does this mean? As you're filling out SIP, if you're familiar with it last year, you'll be answering questions, sometimes multiple choice, a multiple select, an open text field, or you'll have to attach pieces of evidence from your organization. You're probably quite familiar with the mission, vision, strategic plan. This is something that we've always asked for within SIP. That's 1 piece of evidence, but we've really tried to expand it. Now that we've expanded it and we're asking you for courses and research publications, we understand that maybe this is not directly related to your scope. So please invite a teacher or a researcher to fill out what they work on and what they know the best. It's not a requirement. If you feel like doing it all yourself, you can. But if you'd like to delegate some of your work, that's also possible. Now, how does this work? You'll log into Commons, you navigate to the SIP report, you'll begin answering some questions, and at some point, we will ask you for evidence. You could fill this out yourself or invite a contributor via their email, or if they're already part of Commons, their user in there. We will send them an invitation with instructions about how to sign up, plus a customizable message that you can create. They'll click an email link and complete sign up, which we've tried to make quite a bit easier specifically for these users this year. Once they're logged in, we'll display something on the homepage telling them what they must do. Hey, you've been invited to create an evidence for this part of your SIP, your organization SIP report by you, hopefully the focal point. They'll create it and submit it on their own. We will notify you about the progress about these evidences. You'll have the chance to review and then attach them to your SIP report to fulfill the reporting requirement without having to actually fill it out yourself. You have oversight about this. There's not a hard limit about the number of people that you can invite. And again, if you prefer to gather this information in another way, you have other work processes, and then enter it in yourself, this is absolutely okay, and we want that to be an option. Any questions so far? Take just a quick minute as I see we're going a little fast. All right. Now let's look at the platform itself. We're going to hop into a walkthrough now. Hopefully, this page is a little familiar to you if you've seen it last year. Otherwise, we're happy to present it to you now. You'll see that narratives and objects or object repository doesn't exist on the sidebar anymore. It's all underneath the tab of evidence. Quick walkthrough of what this is. Evidence repositories where all evidence is kept is where you can go to explore. Institutional evidence are things that your institution has created. Whether it's yours, a collaborator, a colleague, you'll find it here. If you, as a contributor or creator of a piece of evidence, mark it as public or for the Prime community, you'll see it within this community evidence. This is shared from other schools. I can take a look at what they're working on. Maybe I'm interested in a course or an event. I can see these here. And last are the things that I've created. To create a piece of evidence, you can come to either of these tabs, click this button to begin the process, and then select what you'd like to attach. Today, I'll start out with a narrative. And here, I think I want to tell a story about managing software development at Prime, because it's something that I know. It's a story that I can tell. Here, I'll give it a title. And just for today, I'll keep it private. Don't want to be bringing non-RME things into the community. This is probably best practices, even though it's for a slightly different field. And here, I'll tell my story. I've typed this out beforehand, so no keyboard records broken today. I can go through and style this how I might like. I can add photos, I can add attachments, I can add links. And we have this last button of, if you'd like this narrative to be considered for a feature story in Prime's communication channels, which is something that we'll show on our website and it could make its way into a newsletter, tick this last box so that we can filter and see your intent that you really want to share this more broadly. After you've filled out your fields, you can click Save. Oops. Here we are. Now, looking at some of the others, if you are familiar with narratives, you'll see that it's changed quite a bit. We've taken away the explicit chapters, but given you this rich text interface. If you'd like to structure it as chapters, if you'd like to structure it as copied from a Word document, Google document, or a Markdown file, you can do all of these things. Next, let's take a look at courses. This is something that is quite built out compared to last year. I won't go through and create one, but we will walk through the fields. You'll give your course a name. You can mark members of your institution as contributors. Today is Cheyenne and I. Sharing rights, again, I'll make it private. Course code, as I don't have a course I'm currently teaching. I don't have a course code. Here, I can list the duration of the course. Maybe it's 1 week across the summer. Maybe it's a full program. You can mark this here. Here, you can also mark down the format, whether it's a one-day session. You can also add items to this. So if it's a 2-week-long workshop, feel free to create it, add it in here. Other members of your institution will see that format, so it can be reused. The department, let's do computer information systems, just with my background. Here, I can go through and mark down some learning outcomes. We have some defined here from pedagogical experts within Prime and from our partners. You can also add new types of learning outcomes, which will be accessible across your organization in real time. I can mark the following concepts that the course is related to. Again, all of these fields, you can add additional items to this list. They will be reused, hopefully to make it flexible enough for your use cases. I can list the type of pedagogies that are used within this course. And again, none or I'm not sure. It's an okay answer. We do appreciate the honesty. Here, we'll give a description of the course. This is similar to what you see in your course catalog or what you publish on your front page websites. And this is something that this next field, it's optional, but it's something that we'd really like to see. It's for the teacher or the person reporting for this to tell about the impact that this course or this teacher is making on the students that take the course. Next, please tag your SDGs if they're applicable. And finally, awarding. If you would like to be considered for an award, again, please mark your evidence as you create it. This helps us filter out, as this is the first year that we're directly taking things within Commons and looking to provide awards or recognition more broadly with this. Now, we ask for a syllabus, a teaching statement, reading materials, and presentations. And we do have a template if you don't have one that's already applied. If you do have yours, don't feel like you need to conform to it. Use your own. That's all right. If it covers the fields in here, that's even better. If you look at your template and realize it may miss some, either revise them or hopefully the rest of the fields within the evidence type will cover that. You'll see required materials, the meeting times and locations, grading policy, the grading scale, the policies on attendance, participation, late work, academic integrity, accommodations that the teacher or the class may provide, and a class schedule that we'd hope to see. Here's a quick example of what this could be. Class 1 is a concept introduction. Class 2 is a deep dive. That's a few days later in the week. And then Class 3 is application. Tell us about what the focus of each class is, the activities that you do, and hopefully also seeing some of the final project or assessment or final paper details. Looking a bit more into teaching statement, here's a different template for you. Write down your body paragraphs of your goals. How are they reached? Where do they come from? Why do you believe that these represent you as an educator? As you might start to see, a lot of these fields and forms are very educator specific. It's not something that maybe you would feel comfortable filling out on your own, which is why we built out the platform so that you can directly invite teachers and have them fill it out instead of assigning it to them outside of the reporting period. If you want to do this, again, it's absolutely okay. Finally, here's a template on reading materials. It tells you about some of the standards that it may live up to or be aligned with. Also hearing about the assessment, data analysis, what can you do within your class to see how your students are learning. And we have more templates for presentations as such as well. This is the pacing guide. So what happens during the week? What standards do you follow? What are the outcomes? Will it be reinforced later? Hopefully, even if you don't end up inviting your teachers to the platform, if you would disseminate this, maybe it could be useful for them to reflect on how they're structuring, keeping track of what goes on within their courses within your institution. And again, we would another thing that we'd like to see are maybe images from your class. What does the format look like? Have you done an interesting project or presented it at a fair? Next, I'll look through a conference and publication. Here I do have some fields filled out. The title is not an accurate title, I will say. Here we'll set it to private. This is a peer-reviewed article. I don't have a DOI on hand. And there are some other authors, I won't fill it out currently. This was presented at AOM. Here, I've got a description or a summary pre-typed out. Again, no keyboard speed records here. We have an optional field to hear about what the ideal impact of this research would be, hopefully filled out by someone that truly understands the scope of the article and how it connects to the rest of the field. Now, when I go to select an SDG, maybe it's directly aligned with what's going on within my article or within what I've uploaded. Maybe it's not as aligned, but there's still an arguable relation. For quality education, this article was on psychometric testing and educational performance within sustainability. I would say that this correlates quite well with SDG 4. And the background of what we used did require some innovation, and it was applied at scale. So let's add somewhat here. It's currently not available through open access. I could provide a link. I could provide an attachment. Oh, minutia. Oh, great. All right. So this is what evidence looks like. This is the process that you'll probably go through a handful of times for your reporting. Maybe you'll delegate this out to others so they can support you. Now, if you ever want to know what is a narrative again, or what kind of things are you looking for, we've added guidance within this interface. So here we have a glossary of each of the evidences. description of what they look like, and we've also given an example. When I give an attachment, this is what it might be displayed as. I can see the 2024 annual report from Prime. Within a narrative, this is a way to tell a story that we'd be interested in seeing. You tag some subjects, you provide strong paragraphs in terms of supporting context, and you can see that this is not marked for a feature story. Looking at some of the more complex ones, such as course, here's what a filled out course could look like. We see course codes, the department, duration, quite a few learning outcomes selected. It seems to be very rich here. Concepts, again, there's a lot of tagging. And here we tell the story about what the class is, the structure of it, the relation to SDGs, and the templates that we showed earlier. We can download these and you'll have access to them. If you ever wonder kind of what is a really good example, maybe not just middle of the field that we would like to see within SIP reporting, these examples are a good place to start to understand how can I live up to best show off my organization and to provide Prime with really high quality data and an interesting look within your school. One last thing on evidence, if you remember from last year, you can start a discussion. In a discussion, I can go and attach pieces of evidence either to start a thread or in response through a comment. So it becomes a living repository beyond just SIP if you decide to use it this way. Join our members. We have 1,500 here. We have 65 discussions. Take a look and try and add some of the things that you've shown to SIP to some of these discussions. Talk about why what you did was so great, or look for support on certain courses if you see good examples elsewhere. So this is our walkthrough of evidence. I'm hoping that you got to see what does it look like to go through the platform, what are each of the fields, and we hope that you feel that the interface has changed for the better and that you have additional guidance along the way. If you ever get lost, we have this glossary page for you. This is something that you can share within your organization if you have other people within Commons. Just taking a quick break, looking at chat, seeing if there's any questions.
Alex, we did have a question that I answered by typing, but someone had asked if it might be possible to use an Excel sheet to upload all of the courses, as sometimes, they can have hundreds. So just flagging that as something that maybe we can take back and discuss with our developers.
Yeah, this is something that we can look at. If your courses are well documented like this, it should be possible to import them. This is something that we'll work on. I see another question about after creating evidence, can we attach it directly to the SIP? Yeah. Once you've created it, now that it's before the reporting period, if you want to get a head start, you can go through and create some of the evidence that you might want to answer your SIP with. And the inverse is also true. Directly within the SIP, I can create evidence. I don't have to navigate to the evidence repository and click multiple buttons. If I'm there and answering it and I want to create it then and there, I click one button, the field pops up, and I can start filling it. All right. And yes, we will send out the recording once we're complete here. Taking a moment as we have some more questions coming in. So is there a preview option so we can see how it looks before publishing? This is something that we had last year, and this is something that we will provide again. As you're completing your SIP report, before you fully submitted it, you can see what will it look like in a PDF or a report format. This probably won't be available day one of the reporting period. It may take us a few weeks to really iron this out so that you can have a beautiful report, not just a report. And then you'll also have a preview option. Under publications, can it be a summary of items rather than individual items? I think that we might like to see if it's kind of like a publication series or a very related set of research that you've done. it should be all right to fill these out within one piece of conferences or publications. If they are reasonably different, maybe we'd like to see multiple so that we can discuss them in the community pages granularly or share these within the community elsewhere at an individual level. So I'll take a bit more time for questions if there are any. Otherwise, this has been the walkthrough on evidence. We hope that you see the changes that we've made in response to your comments. I have a couple other ones that I don't have listed here, but that are 100% from the community. In narrative, you won't see impact purpose, impact statement, and then a field for description. This is gone. Yes, it was confusing. Yes, it was our fault. Hopefully it's clearer now. Cheyenne, would you like to talk about the recognition that we have for some of these evidences this year? As this is also new and this is very much a comms point of view.
Sure. What do you mean by recognition exactly?
So in narrative, we have these fields or these
Oh,
check
yes.
boxes.
Yes, sure. So, yeah, we're going to be launching a series called Impact Stories, where we're really looking to find great examples of faculty, of deans, of university leadership, of researchers who have been publishing or teaching certain courses that really have an impact on their students and make a difference in the larger responsible management education space. So we're looking for those stories to share. So that ticking that box allows us to filter through, and then we can hopefully reach out to the creator of that evidence, schedule an interview and actually dive a little bit deeper into those narratives. It's also a chance for us to feature the work of our signatories on social media, in our newsletter. You may have seen where we're doing these new signatory spotlights where we're trying to kind of highlight institutions who have largely demonstrated commitment to sustainability in the annual report, just trying to find more ways to highlight the work of our signatories. And since you all are having to report on this annually, we figured this was a great way to collect some of that. So that's the reason for those boxes, and we'd love for you to use those if you feel that you have a great story to share.
We've got a few more questions coming. We have one asking, when selecting private to work on the report or piece of evidence as a draft, once the whole report is complete and you've submitted, is there a way to make every section public, or do you have to manually change each evidence, each part from private to public? There is a way to make each section public. When you submit the report, we take a copy of everything that you've submitted and store it as it was when you submitted. Let's say you have a piece of evidence that you've attached to SIP report in 2024, or that you attached to the report this year. You submit it, then before the report next year, you go to edit it and attach it again to the next year's report. The previous year's report won't change. It's not like you can go back in time and affect your answers like that. And as you've taken a copy of it, you can go through and change the sharing rights either very granularly for each question that you've answered, for the entire report, or for sections of the report delimited by principle. We have another question about these bulk imports or uploads from Excel or CSVs. This is something that we don't have quite yet, but this is something that, thinking about courses as there's large amounts of them, same thing for partnerships or collaborations. This is something that I think that we will work to provide to you around the reporting period so that you can import from a CSV or import from an Excel file for these types of evidence that you may already have a lot of well-structured data on. We had a question about are there preferred, how many courses should we share, maybe in the teach principle? I think that we're looking for both quantity and quality, but probably quality first. Uploading more than 10 courses is a lot. 10 courses by themselves is quite a lot of information to give. I would not expect to go over that. And I don't think that there's much in terms of return of going from 10 courses to 12 or etc. But seeing three really good ones could be great from each signatory. Five would be, again, really, really wonderful to see, but I don't think that we truly expect much more than that.
Yeah, and then the SIP report as well. We encourage at least one from kind of the basic business and management disciplines. So you'll see those listed as examples. So business admin, accounting, business analytics, economics, international business, et cetera. So just a few of those kind of core courses would be great to see. Because something that we're also working to develop is curriculum that can be used by our
Mhm.
signatories. And so kind of having this data from you also allows us to inform the work that we're giving back to the community as well. So it's more than just reporting, it also helps us to structure more resources for you guys. So we've listed a few that we would encourage at least one from, but it's really kind of always up to you when it comes to how much information you'd like to share.
If you all have any more questions, please share them now. I think they will be quite a bit under time, as I don't have much more prepared. I hope that you felt like the walkthrough showed you kind of what to expect, where can I find materials that'll support me, and that you see changes in the platform that'll help you tell a rich story and to not overburden you in terms of reporting requirements. We have a question in chat of what is the time frame from which we should take our evidence. This is the 2025 reporting period, so we'll be looking back just about 1 year. So from March 2025, you can also go to the end of the academic year, to the beginning of the academic year, or March 2024 is a reasonable time frame to report for. If you haven't reported from 2023, you don't necessarily need to catch up the entire history of your organization, just report on the last year of progress. In case we have a question while working on the SIP, who should we contact? Here on this last slide, you'll see commons@unprime.org. This is the support email that me and some other members of the team will manage. If you'd like to ask us questions there, please do. There's also info@unprime, which is the more general info box for many of Prime's activities. Either of those inboxes, you'll get an answer back. As we're closing up, we're really excited for this year's reporting period. We hope that this SIP will stay in its current or a very similar format for years to come. This was a large internal effort to make it something that more aligns with the stories that you'd like to tell us and your expectations. We're constantly looking to improve. If you have ideas, requests, such as the bulk upload of courses, that's a wonderful idea, and we will work on this internally. Please keep sharing with us things that you'd like to see and how we can tailor the platform to best suit your needs. And we're excited to see what you report, excited to hear your stories and to see what went on within your institution in the past year or two.
And our next webinar is on March 31st. We have one in the morning and in the evening Eastern time to accommodate our global audience. And there we'll be walking through how to respond to the SIP report. That webinar will of course, be recorded and shared. But if you're looking to kind of see more into the platform, that's our next one. Alex, we have one more question from Jessica asking if we can talk a little bit more about what the new output report would look like.
Sure. So I don't have an example pulled up in front of me, but talking about it a bit more generally, last year, if you had an attachment that was a PDF, we would insert it into your report, and this could look quite bad, as maybe it doesn't match the branding of the rest of the report. We've stopped doing this. We'll add links to the report that you can access either with a QR code or from your computer that'll show the pieces of evidence that you've attached, kind of like a citation, yeah, in an article. We'll have additional forms of co-branding between Prime and your signatory and some templates of reports. So you select a template. Um, I think that we plan to have 3 or 4 this year that are different design systems applied to the content that you've sent us, so that it really shows your institution and Prime. This is the report. There's a singular design system behind the report, as we're not inserting these other documents, but rather referencing and linking to them. And there's additional customization for these reports. If you have a color schema or certain images, maybe for a cover page that you'd like to share with us, you can affect these, and then your report will reflect these modifications or personalizations that you might like to apply. It will be accessible online or as a PDF format. Yeah, I don't think I have more of the specifications in mind at the moment. All right, I think that's all. Thank you all for attending. Thank you so much to Cheyenne for your support in this, and wishing you all a good week. Thank you.